So with OCD, I worry about harming tiny little creatures like insects or mites. And so I have lots of compulsions to make sure I don't harm them. So this could be like checking surfaces to make sure I don't squish an insect or a mite so that I don't cause it pain or suffering. And it could be like if I see a worm on the pavement, I have to pick the worm up and put it on the grass so that it doesn't dry out or die or that so no one steps on it. Yeah, and so also with my OCD, I worry about things like gender. So if you think about, because with me caring about not harming creatures, I'll be caring about being a caring and empathetic person. I guess gender stereotypes, you might associate men more with like harming things, or you might associate men with being like less caring or less empathetic. And it's interesting because I guess I have the OCD around gender, but I also have the OCD around like not harming insects, like being caring towards them. So they get like crossed together. So I have quite a lot of compulsions to make sure I don't harm insects, which are also around gender. So I guess in the pictures, like me lying down on a pillow, and the first thing you might notice is I've drawn long eyelashes on me, and that's because a lot of my compulsions to do with not harming insects are like acting feminine, because you might associate feminine with more care and less likely to harm things. And so I wear like fake eyelashes when I go to bed, like eyelash extensions. And this is generally just because if I'm lying down on the pillow, there might be like tiny creatures on the pillow, like there's millions of dust mites on the pillow, and I don't want to harm them. So the long eyelashes, the eyelash extensions, just like gently brush them out the way when I'm like moving my head around in my sleep. Yeah. And also my cheeks are green because I get quite red cheeks. Uh, and obviously, like, insects are attracted to red, or like just colorful colors, like, because flowers can be red. And so I don't want insects to land on my face, because then my face might feel itchy and I might go to scratch my face and then I've like accidentally killed an insect by accident. So I don't really want insects to land on my face. So I use color corrector makeup. And so if you've got a red face, you just put the green makeup on, and so I guess it's like it contrasts some color to the red, so it just evens it out. It doesn't look as red anymore. So I use that makeup. And I also have like very long nails because, as you can see here, there's a worm, an earthworm here, and like you can use your really long nails to scoop up earthworms, and then that makes it easier to put them on the grass without harming the earthworms, because someone might stand on the worms. So you've got to rescue them, but you've also got to be delicate because they're very delicate themselves, the worms. Yeah, and I think you can see my head is a bit like red at the top. Uh, like yeah, and I think this is like a technique I use called micro needling, and it just stimulates hair growth, and like I guess it's good for your hair or good for your skin. And yeah, and so what it does is it stimulates blood flow to your scalp or something like that. But it's quite good because I like, well, obviously no one likes getting bitten by mosquitoes, but at the same time, mosquitoes they've got to eat, like they've got to feed on something, so they're gonna land on you anyway. So you may as well give them a nice meal, just because you don't want them to go hungry. You don't want, yeah. So yeah, I stimulate blood flow to my scalp just to help the mosquitoes. Really, just have a nice meal. Yeah, and then yes, I guess this is what we can talk about next. So you can see my chest area there, and you can see like my red dots, which might be mites in between my chest, and I'm on a antipsychotic called risperidone, and risperidone actually increases prolactin, this hormone, and it can actually increase prolactin more than other antipsychotics. And prolactin can stimulate breast development even in men. So I guess I did have some breasts. Well, like obviously, I didn't have like double D's or anything like that, but I did have like breasts that were bigger than is typical for a man. And so generally, when I was like moving, they'd sort of like swing into each other, the breasts. I mean, they weren't that big, but I guess with OCD, you blow stuff out of proportion. So in my mind, they were swinging into each other a bit. And I guess like if I ever had an insect between them, or like it might, because obviously, yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm not going to go into it, but like they would swing together and the insect would get caught in between the two breasts and get squished. So I got a breast reduction surgery. And obviously, like, it wasn't just because of the OCD. I guess it was, I don't know, I felt a bit uncomfortable having breasts, basically. And yeah, so that's that. And then I think sometimes I wear stilettos or like high heels. And basically, I guess when you're putting your feet on the ground, like you might step on an insect or like squish a mite, and like I don't want to do that, but I guess like if you have less of your foot in contact with the ground, as if your foot's raised off the ground, then you might be less likely to kill insects because there's like less surface area of your foot in contact with the ground. And yeah, so I wear high heels. I normally wear them like in the house or in the garden, or like I guess like if I was going for a walk in the countryside. I mean, I don't wear them in crowded spaces just because I feel a bit self-conscious about that people might judge me for wearing high heels. But yeah, I wear high heels. And yeah, I mean, if I'm in the countryside, I'll wear high heels when I'm on a stone path. But if I'm on like grass or something like that, they would actually, the pressure of the high heels would actually dig more into the mud or the soil, and that might actually kill more insects. I might. So I only wear them when I'm walking along stone paths. Yeah. And then the other thing you can see is like a razor. It's like a razor because I do shave my legs, and it's basically just because if I go outside and I'm wearing shorts, like and I've got really hairy legs, so all the insects and mites, they just get caught in my hairy legs. And like it just means that when I go back inside the house, they're still all caught up in my hairy legs. And then you just transfer them into the house where it's not the natural environment and they don't feel as happy in the house. Well, that's how my OCD interprets it. So what I do is I shave my legs because your hairy legs have quite a huge surface area with all the hairs for all the insects to get caught in, and I don't want insects to get caught and get in my legs. So I just shave my legs so they don't get trapped in the house. I hope this makes sense, but I guess this is like OCD logic. So yeah, I mean, I think I've talked about my nails, my long nails, so I can scoop up worms, so they don't get hurt. I've talked about pretty much everything. Yeah, thanks. So a lot of these things are actually contributing factors, like insects aren't the only reason I do these behaviors. And this is because, like, say, when I'm like doing the micro needling, so stimulating blood flow to my scalp, which feeds mosquitoes better. Like I am actually losing my hair, so micro needling does stimulate hair growth. Uh, by like stimulating blood flow to the scalp. And then like when it comes to like growing my nails long to pick up worms, I mean sometimes I just can't be bothered to cut my nails. It's like it's lots of contributing factors. Uh so when I say this next part, it probably sounds ridiculous, but if you look at all the factors, like it's a lot more plausible than you think. Like so basically I wanted to do a sport, and but there's lots of factors that stop me from doing sports. And well, the only sport that I ended up doing was pole dancing. And like I'm just gonna explain
all the reasons why I pole dance, so it doesn't just sound ridiculous. Well, first of all, when I'm like walking somewhere, I always have to scan the ground, and this is just so I don't step on any insects, uh, or like I don't step on any worms. And like I'm always just scanning the ground. So I'm always looking down while I'm walking, and like every twig I see, I'll like scan. I'll think, is this a worm? Like, and but basically, if I was to run, like if I was to go running or like do another sport that involves running, I couldn't constantly scan the ground at the same time because I'd be moving too fast, and I might not see insects or worms, and then I might just step on them. Yes. So this rules out quite a lot of sports. And like I said, it's contributing factors. So there are other things like, even though I worry about harming insects because I care about morality and I don't want them to suffer or feel pain. I also don't want to get stung by wasps or bees, so I do worry about getting stung a lot as well. And this means if I was playing tennis, like there's going to be lots of wasps or bees on the court, and I'm scared like if I hit one with the ball or if I run to hit the shot and then go near a wasp without realizing that it might sting me. So this, and basically if I'm ever in the same place for a prolonged period of time, like if I was just standing still, like if I was on an exercise bike and I was just in the garden on an exercise bike the whole time, like wasps would like or bees would come along and they might sting me. And I don't even go in my garden in general because well, only to hang the wash now and take it in. Like if I was in the garden sitting down, like eventually a bee or a wasp would come along because you're not on the move. What basically happens is I don't want to go near any wasps, and so it has to be indoors. And I don't want to be like stepping on insects and causing the insects pain or suffering, which means I don't want to touch the ground. And so normally I just wear like high heels or like stilettos to minimize this, except if you're running, you can't really run like and wear stilettos at the same time. And if you're playing football, they're just gonna sink into the mud, and you're probably gonna end up killing more insects or mites or springtails or whatever's in the soil. So I wanted to do a sport where your feet don't touch the ground, and that's indoors. And so when you pole dancing, your feet never actually touch the ground because you're on the pole. You don't need to worry about squishing insects. Yeah, like it's just so much easier. And I know it like I shouldn't be accommodating the OCD, but like I don't know. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know why like OCD is just like irrational. It's sort of when you have anxiety, you sort of avoid things, and then you avoid more things, and eventually you sort of like the circle of what you can do in life becomes smaller and smaller until you no longer can play tennis, you can no longer go for runs, and eventually all you're left with is just pole dancing because like you need to do activities during the day, like if you're just doing nothing all day, it's just boring. Like I don't have a job, I have to do some physical exercise. And if I was just walking, it doesn't really get your heart rate going, it's not cardio. And so yeah, it's just I don't know what else to do but pole dancing. And obviously, yeah, like I have issues with gender where I have to be more feminine because of my OCD, because you may associate femininity with harming things less or being more caring. So I just pole dance. Like it sounds ridiculous, but that's OCD. Yeah.
So what you're looking at now is a daddy long legs, and I guess it's a bit complicated calling it a daddy long legs because there's actually multiple unrelated groups of like invertebrates which get called daddy long legs, like even crane flies get called daddy long legs. But what I'm specifically referring to is a harvestman. And so harvestmen, they can look superficially like spiders, they're arachnids. I assume they have 8 legs, but they can lose legs and stuff like that. So yeah, so they're an arachnid like mites and spiders are, but they're not actually spiders. They're a separate group. It gets called Opiliones, and as you can see, there's not really that much of a distinction between the head area and like the abdomen or whatever you call it in arachnids. Yeah, it's like they don't really have a waist basically. Like spiders look like they're split into two parts, their bodies, whereas harvestmen don't. And yeah, because I'm saying all this because I'm like very interested in like mites, and other tiny creatures, just because I've had OCD around not harming tiny creatures, and that's led me to become interested in tiny creatures and like interested in worms. And with autism, you have like special interests. So you get like really, really interested in like mites. And so I've drawn the harvestman, and I've drawn like little mites on its legs, because you do actually get mites on harvestman's legs. And yeah, I mean, it's like interesting. And so I do a lot of art because like yeah, I mean, I'd like to think I was a creative person. But and so when I was in an art group for people with mental health problems, the other week, they were making bracelets with like jewelry and beads, and I thought like, oh, I'll make myself a couple bracelets or a couple necklaces, just because the mites on like the harvestman's legs, like I love the texture of mites. It's like a sensory thing, the way they look in the light. They're like, I don't know, it's like the texture of jelly beans basically, or like jewelry, like gems or beads. They've just got like a nice, and I love the color red. They've just got a nice texture, and so I wanted to like, because I quite like harvestmen as well, so I wanted to feel like a harvestman and express my love for mites. So I made like necklaces out of like red beads or like red gems, and then bracelets and stuff like that. And I guess like because some people were making like friendship bracelets for each other in the art group, and like I guess, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to go into, but like I didn't make anyone a friendship bracelet. It's to do with the OCD, but like yeah, I'm not going to go into that because it might be misinterpreted as something else. Yeah, but basically, like I just like wearing bracelets and necklaces just because of my love for mites. It's like wearing little mites on you, like the little beads. I sort of treat mites like humans with because of autism, and so I guess it is still technically a friendship bracelet. It's just like the mites are my friends, if that makes sense. So here's why I became a geriatric nurse. And so when you think of like stereotypically male jobs or stereotypically female jobs, a nurse is sort of a job where you might think of it as a stereotypically female job. And that sort of triggers my OCD a bit, because I want to be like a caring person. I want to be kind, and I guess there's that stereotype that women might be more caring or kind or empathetic, or like have more emotional intelligence or be better listeners and stuff like that. And so it does make you feel a bit guilty or like shame about being a man, because obviously I want to be like caring as well, and my family would say I'm a very caring person, and I did look after my grandma for like 30 hours a week because she has Alzheimer's. And yeah, but it's just like she said that I was too kind and caring to be straight, which she basically thought I was gay. and I am straight, so it's just like, I don't know, the idea that you might not be as caring, just be, yeah, is like triggers you because you want to be a caring person. So why did I become a geriatric nurse? Well, yes, so like we've said, I cared for my grandma 30 hours a week, so I was a carer. And that led me into geriatric nursing. So that was one factor. And then another factor was basically I don't dig because if I was like to put a spade in the soil or just dig or with a shovel or whatever, you would end up just damaging all the little creatures' habitats. You know, the worms might have made burrows. You know, you might cut a worm in half with the shovel, just like compressing the ground and squishing all the tiny insects or mites or springtails. So I didn't like digging, um, but I do like. So basically, I like the idea of becoming an archaeologist or a paleontologist. So studying like humans, like in a historical setting, or studying past animals in a geological or historical setting. So yeah, but because I don't dig because of my OCD, like I couldn't just be like digging up like skeletons and stuff like that if I was an archaeologist all the time, because it would clash with my OCD. So I didn't want to be I couldn't become an archaeologist because of that. And then with like paleontology, like you have to pick up rocks and then take them back with you. And so like you just end up like when you take the rocks back to the lab, you take all the little mites or like tiny creatures that are on the rock end up getting put in the lab where they're no longer in the natural environment and they won't be as happy and they'll just die basically. And they're probably more happy outside because like you're transporting the rocks like quite a distance from the natural environment, so they'll not be as happy. And so yeah, so that put me off paleontology and archaeology, but at the same time I still liked like very old things. There's a lot of history to like old things, like even just like recent history I'm quite interested in. And so this got me into wanting to care for old people because I guess like with Alzheimer's, it can affect your short-term memory more than your long-term memory, so they might still remember all their past times. And it's interesting to see what they were like in the past, or like learn about history and stuff like that. They've got like a story to tell. So I became I became a nurse and I specialized in geriatrics, like old people. And yeah, so basically I don't I like I don't I don't work with fossils anymore or like dinosaurs or anything like that, but I do work with old people. So it sort of fills the same needs basically. And yeah, I'm a nurse. One thing that's quite hard for people to understand is like, why would I just walk around in public wearing high heels or stilettos? You know, I've got autism. I get like anxious in social situations. I have to mask my quirkiness. If I feel self-conscious, why would and anxious, why would I just be wearing like high heels around? And I guess this is where like the bipolar comes into it because uh, I think the psychiatrist thinks I have bipolar, but I don't have a full diagnosis yet because it's like a lifelong diagnosis. And so lately, I've actually been in mania and depression at the same time. And this is just called a mixed episode, and this is real. Uh, this does happen. You know, you can have symptoms of mania and symptoms of depression at the same time. And so what this does is to say some people when they have just mania alone, they might feel not as much anxious. The OCD may not feel that bad. And when people have just depression by themselves, they can feel like very anxious. Their OCD can be very bad. But then when you have mania and depression together, you can just feel very anxious, very agitated, or like angry, or like irritable. You've got like a lot of energy, but you've also got like negative emotions or negative thoughts, but a lot of energy behind that. And so what happened with me in the past few months is, so normally I feel very self-conscious, very anxious in social situations. I would never really have the courage to wear high heels when I go for a walk. But in mania, I had the OCD was very bad, so I worried about harming tiny little creatures. But at the same time, like my social anxiety wasn't that bad, because like it's weird, because with mania life just feels like a bit of a laugh. You like over familiarize yourself with other people, like you sort of act around other people as if they're family members. You just treat them like you know them very well, even if they're strangers, and you're more like comfortable just being yourself. You've got no inhibition, you're just impulsive. So you just go out walking in the street with high heels, and you put on makeup, and that's just, yeah, it's just because you still worry. With being in a mixed episode, you have a lot of anxiety, we have a lot of OCD around not harming creatures. That's why you wear the high heels, but at the same time you still think life's just a bit of a laugh. uh it's like really hard to explain and what a mixed episode is like. So you're having a laugh, you're wearing high heels, but at the same time, you're also wearing high heels so you don't harm the insects. And so what happens is you gradually get more and more comfortable wearing high heels. You get comfortable unmasking your autism. You realize, well, no one's actually said anything like hateful towards me for wearing high heels. You become a lot more comfortable wearing high heels. And once the mania and depression is worn off, uh, like you've basically exposed yourself to the anxiety of wearing high heels, so you no longer fear wearing high heels. So even though the mania and depression have gone, you still just walk around the street in high heels or stilettos. You still put makeup on, like skin color corrector, like if you've got like a red face, you put on like a green makeup, and it's like contrasting colors, and you just do all those things. Like the mania just makes you so confident, even if you do have a lot of OCD anxiety. You just feel really confident, like you just like in your own skin. You can just, like, your self-esteem is really high. It's like, oh well, if I want to walk around in high heels, like I don't see a problem with that. I'm just very confident. I just don't really care, to be honest. But then I guess sometimes in social situations, because you're depressed as well as manic, you like afterwards you might think, oh, have I what do people think of that? But that's more related to the OCD, where you worry about upsetting people, whereas just with the mania, you're just so confident. uh yeah, it's like, yeah. Here's why I keep a handbag full of dust and dust mites. With autism, you can personify animals or inanimate objects, which means you can attribute human-like qualities to the animals and inanimate objects and see them as people. Mites are very round and tiny things are cute. I love the idea of a chihuahua being small enough to fit in handbags. I don't keep very many pets because with my OCD I worry they might not have the best life. I love earthworms, but I wouldn't even keep a worm farm because the worms might reproduce a lot and the container may become very crowded, which would not be very nice for the worms, as they want their space. And apparently eventually the conditions would deteriorate enough that all the worms would die. I worry the worms might not be that happy. Dust mites are so tiny that they must not have much of a nervous system, and so they might not have as much capacity to suffer. My OCD has got a bit better, and I acknowledge there are millions of dust mites on just your pillow, and so no matter what I do, I can never have 100% certainty that I won't kill lots of dust mites. and I assume I accidentally killed dust mites all the time because they're everywhere. My mom needed a new handbag, and I thought I didn't want to throw the old one out because waste is bad for the environment. I thought I love chihuahuas small enough to fit in a handbag. It's just so cute. And dust mites are the only pet I would want to keep because I worry more about other pets not being happy. And the dust mites, and over time a huge amount of dust collection in my vacuum cleaner, I decided I would fill the handbag with all the dust collected in the vacuum cleaner. When I wanted to take up a sport, I thought about gymnastics. I thought if I took up trampolining, every time you jumped on a trampoline, tiny creatures would go flying into the air. And that would be like the worst roller coaster for the tiny creatures. It would be horrible for them. I thought the only gymnastics related sport I could do was pole dancing. When I'm picking up earthworms, I try and find the nearest bit of soil or grass to put them in so they don't dry out or get stood on. But sometimes you end up walking far enough that you worry all your movement is scaring the earthworms and they don't know what's happening to them. I didn't like the idea of carrying the handbag full of dust and dust mites outside because the motion and movement might upset the mites, and if it's sunny, the dust mites may not like direct sunlight. I just keep my handbag full of dust at home, out of direct sunlight. I'm aware tiny creatures may not feel the same complexity of emotions as humans. They may not feel anything what we would call happy, but maybe they feel some negative experience like pain, or some positive experience like when finding a reward, and I'd rather err on the side of caution than risk hurting them. Here is why when I was 17 I got hair extensions, and why now I'm thinking of getting a hairpiece or more hair extensions. When I was around 17, I had very bad body dysmorphia, and one day the barber cut my fringe too short, and I was really upset, so I got hair extensions on my fringe. Years later, I am now going bald, and I am considering getting a hairpiece or hair extensions. This comes back to what I associate with gender. You may associate qualities such as being dominant or an alpha male with being bald, or a very manly, hardened person. I'd like to express my feminine, sweet and sensitive, soft side, but people might see me differently or more masculine if I'm bald or have a shaved head. I look quite young for my age, and I look quite cute. My mom looks cute in the same way a puppy is cute. I worry that I love my mom more because of how cute she is, and I hope when I'm my mom's age, I still look cute, as people might not like me as much if I'm not. I may look a lot older if I'm going bald, or have a bald patch or receding hairline. I'm getting hair extensions to thicken my fringe. I guess I would associate more negative qualities with masculinity, like harm, aggression, creepiness, or making people uncomfortable. Lots of problematic behaviors, even if that I would associate masculinity with a lot of problematic behaviors, even if they're not necessarily against the law. I'd associate it with less caring or compassionate, less empathetic, or less emotional intelligence, or less sensitive to people's feelings. Why don't you hear of as many men becoming nurses or therapists as you do with women? Or becoming carers? You always hear so much in the media about masculinity, and like toxic masculinity. And I guess maybe you internalize that and feel a lot of shame, guilt, or anxiety. With OCD, you feel as though even if you don't do anything bad, there's still something bad about you being a man that predisposes you to doing bad things because you care about being a good person and you worry you might be a bad person, or you worry about morality. I guess like if all your trauma is to do with men and you also have trauma from an all-boys school, you may associate negative things with masculinity. I'm very close to my mom and sister who are very nice, and that may have led me to associate positive things with femininity because of my upbringing. I guess some people often internalize the behavior and gender of the parent who is the same gender as the child when the child is being socialized. I'm a lot more like my mom And maybe I have been socialized a lot more to act like my parent that is an opposite gender to me. That's why, even though I'm straight, I act a bit feminine. That's why I wear color corrector makeup. That's why I wear high heels, and that's why I even pole dance. And don't get me wrong, I only started pole dancing when I was in bipolar mania. I just never stopped pole dancing when the mania ended because I became more comfortable with it. Here's why I'm partially vegan, even though I'm not gay. First of all, I don't even know if there's any truth at all to gay people being vegan. I don't know, maybe they've been treated unfairly themselves or faced injustice because of their orientation and sometimes have more sympathy for animals because of that. Maybe I'm just projecting my autism there. Maybe they're just more left-leaning on average. I don't really know, and even though being vegan may have nothing to do with being gay, I feel like masculinity is heavily associated with hunting animals and aggression, or killing things makes you a real man, or eating meat is manly. I've heard sometimes on dating apps, all the men's profiles are just photos of them holding an animal they've killed, like a fish. Maybe that's more of an American thing, though. I don't fish myself because I wouldn't like a hook sticking through me, and so I wouldn't want to stick a hook through a fish or even stick a hook through bait like a worm. I've heard worms all will wiggle around as if they're in agony. Even if you don't kill the fish, you're still taking it out of the water where it's flopping about as if it's terrified for its life. My sister is allergic to gluten, and so for tea I eat gluten-free food. And if I asked for vegan food, it would be difficult for my parents to make food that is both gluten-free and vegan, and then my family would have to eat that food as well as me, and so I don't like imposing my morality on anyone else. So for tea, I'm not vegan. If my family have no preference over what they want for tea, though, that night, I'll choose a vegan or vegetarian option, though. If I'm out at a restaurant, I will also choose a vegetarian or vegan option. With autism, I'm sensitive to food, and I don't like that many foods. I also have really bad dental anxiety and won't eat anything that's bad for your teeth, like anything with sugar in, like any dessert or like chocolate or anything like that. So it makes it hard for me to go fully vegan. Outside of tea time, I don't eat anything that's meat at all. I still eat some things containing animal products, but I also try and eat things that are completely vegan. It's a bit daft though because I always eat vegan crisps, but I assume there are not many animal products in the crisps anyway. So I eat meat at tea time and a few things during the rest of the day that contain animal products, but I eat vegan crisps out of morality. It's a bit daft and very uneven, and OCD makes you obsess over little things like crisps, even if your OCD logic isn't even consistent. At least I try and eat less animal products. That's probably slightly better for the environment. Maybe I can't really judge people for fishing, as that would make me a bit hypocritical. But that's why I've been eating less meat, and I've actually been having more salads at tea time because my family are trying to eat more healthy, and to an extent they want to eat less meat as well. So that's why I'd rather have a salad than meat, even though I'm straight and a man.
Part 2.
Next, I'm going to talk about why I wear a bra. So I'm on the antipsychotic risperidone. Risperidone increases the hormone prolactin. Prolactin is involved with having a baby and can cause breast development and milk production even in men. Prolactin is thought to also aid in bonding with the baby. Despite my breasts still growing back slightly after my breast reduction, there are a few reasons why I want to stay on the medication risperidone. Firstly, I could change to a different antipsychotic like olanzapine that has less effect on levels of the hormone prolactin. The issue is, as well as treating my bipolar, risperidone also specifically treats irritability and autism, and possibly other issues with autism, whereas I'm not sure if olanzapine has this, treats it as well. While I don't think I would want to cure my autism, I have a lot of anxiety around feeling anger. If you've grown up in an environment where anger was expressed in a very negative way, like rage, you worry that if you're angry in the slightest way, then it's a bad thing and it therefore makes you a bad person just for feeling anger. I don't want to switch to the other antipsychotic olanzapine because I might be more irritable on it and I worry I might take it out on people and negatively affect people. The second reason I want to stay on risperidone is because prolactin is involved with having a baby and bonding with a baby. I worry prolactin therefore may make you more kind and caring and loving, and that you might have a stronger acute response to cute things. I value being very kind and caring, and I value that I have a strong cute response. I even find mites and worms cute, and I love tiny creatures. I don't want to stop finding them cute. With OCD, I care about being the nicest, most moral, perfect person. I don't want to be even slightly less perfect, even if it means having boobs. Another thing is that sometimes high prolactin levels can reduce testosterone. I worry if I come off the antipsychotic risperidone, my testosterone may increase. I may be more aggressive and only care about sex and have lots of problematic behaviours towards women because of it. I saw this nature documentary, and when the animals' testosterone increased, they were trying to fight literally everything, and they were trying to mate with everything. I don't want to be like that. My sister said, though, that I can grow a beard in a day, and that I have a really hairy chest which pokes through the top of my top, so my testosterone levels are probably not low at all. This made me feel better, as I don't want to be an aggressive, dominant alpha male. My OCD around insects, worms and mites is a bit better, and I've actually started running as well as pole dancing. It was a bit uncomfortable to run with boobs, and so that's why I bought a bra. Here's why I breastfed earthworms. So as you know, I have high levels of prolactin, and this can make even men produce milk. Antipsychotics can genuinely make men lactate. I'm not making that up. Previously, I hadn't wanted to have any pets, but I also thought that something to look after would be very beneficial to me and keep me occupied and feel like I was doing something to help things, like being productive. My OCD would normally make me think if I'm getting a pet to help me, then it's selfish and I should be getting a pet to help the animals. This put me off getting pet worms for a while. I didn't realise that earthworm composting is actually really good for the environment. When I found out about earthworm composting, I decided I would get pet worms. By doing things like stopping myself from having any pets, I'm limiting my life. And it just made my whole life just shrink, the amount of things I could do in life. This made me think getting earthworms would expose me to the anxiety while still being beneficial to the environment. Long story short, I got into composting. I read that apparently you can put a small amount of dairy products in a compost. That's just what I read, and so I can't give any advice. I don't want to be responsible for anyone else harming worms because of any advice I give, so don't take any of my advice. But anyway, I thought a very small amount of dairy products would be all right for the earthworms. People will genuinely feed cardboard and whole cotton t-shirts to earthworms. And that is true. I've heard earthworms can eat some amount of meat as well, apparently, and to an extent in biology there's not really such thing as true carnivores or true herbivores. Earthworms will even eat poo, and I did actually have the intrusive thought to poo in my worm compost, but I decided it would be unsanitary, and that's why I also don't really feed meat to worms. So just for clarity, I did not actually poo in the worm farm or the worm compost or whatever. So I thought if I just put a few drops of milk in the compost and mixed it into the soil so it was diluted, then it couldn't do much harm. So I did add some milk to the soil, but just a few drops. And so I thought I would use just a few drops of my own milk that I produced myself. I did it just so I could tell people I did it, and it would be a funny story. That's why I technically breastfed earthworms with milk I produced myself, thanks to antipsychotics and high levels of the hormone prolactin. I wanted to express my caring and nurturing feelings towards earthworms and my affection towards them in a maternal way. And that's how I did it because, like, I guess people say people become like nurses or healthcare workers or therapists because of their maternal instincts. And normally I'd associate that with women, but like, I want to be caring as well. Like, like, you know, like, why can't I be a nurse? Or, well, I was a nurse, but like, why is it just associated with maternal instincts and not like men as well? So yeah, I just thought I'd express my maternal instincts. Yeah. Traditional gender roles are such that women do the housework and look after the children or care for other family members while men go to work and are the provider. Here's why I do housework and care for tiny creatures that are like my children. First, it is important to note that I am no longer a geriatric nurse because my mental health stops me from working. I still want to do things to help other people, so I dry dishes, hoover, carry shopping home, make my family teas and coffees, and hang it washing out and take it in. When taking washing in, I care for tiny creatures as if they're my children. There ends up being lots of insects or spiders crawling on the washing. I don't want the tiny creatures to get into the house because it's not their natural environment, and so the tiny creatures may feel less happy, or even die if I take the washing into the house without removing them. I blow on all the tiny creatures off the washing before I take the washing back into the house. In psychology, women normally get called the primary attachment figure. The relationship between the child and the mother is often emphasized as more important than between the child and the father. I'm not well enough to have children, and I wouldn't want children anyway because they may inherit my mental health conditions, or I would not be able to look after them properly. I'd like to think I'm still a caring and nurturing person, and I still care for worms and other creatures as if they're my babies. It's normally dads you hear about abandoning their kids and not moms abandoning their kids. It makes you feel shame or guilt for being a man. Like I said, I'm going to make sure I don't have kids, but I still do the housework to help my family and to care for tiny creatures, which I view as my babies. I was genuinely my grandma's carer as well. I blow the tiny creatures off the washing instead of like brushing them off with my finger or hand because they're so tiny. They must be like really delicate, especially their tiny little legs. And so I just blow them off. So I'm very gentle and delicate with them. So I'm a very gentle and delicate person. Sometimes when I gracefully blow the insects and spiders off the washing, I worry because even though I'm blowing them off instead of like brushing them off with my hands, I still worry because they're so delicate and like, I mean, like you have to blow them quite strongly, otherwise they just don't come off. So I worry, am I blowing them too hard? And like, I don't know, like when have you heard like when you sneeze and stuff that apparently it's like really fast, like the speed of a car or something like that. As like I don't sneeze on them, but like I have to blow on them quite hard to get them off the wash, and so it's like I'm actually hitting them, and like I mean it's probably better for them than like brushing them off with your hands, but I don't know. I even worry about that. Next, here's how my boobs saved a crab's life. Sometimes I go to the beach and look at rock pools. I get anxiety around slipping on the wet rocks, and I try to be careful, but occasionally I do slip. I saw a crab in the rock pool. I leaned over to get a closer look, and my feet slipped. I was holding my phone trying to take pictures of the crab, so I couldn't just stick out my hands out to break my fall. Either my jaw was going to land on the crab or my chest was. I have dental anxiety and don't want to damage my teeth. I also have body dysmorphia, and in people with this condition, it's oftentimes it's the face they care about the most. So if I landed on my jaw, I could damage my teeth or disfigure my jaw or face. This made me want to land on my chest, not my jaw. I was also conscious that there was a crab below me, and I also didn't want to harm the crab. I want to be clear that I don't exactly have double Ds, but at the same time I thought my boobs would cushion my fall onto the crab so that the crab wouldn't be as hurt. There was some water in the rock pool, and so my boobs alone would not have cushioned my fall, but the water in the rock pool was deep enough that in combination with the water, my boobs managed to cushion my fall. This is me explaining my rationale after the event happened, when I've had more time to think about things. But in the moment, I was aware of my jaw and the crab getting injured, and I changed my posture so my chest was sticking out, and the crab was fine. I still worried whether the crab was completely unharmed or whether I'd still slightly harmed it, but I did feel quite proud of myself, as it's hard to think about things in the moment. I don't know if my instincts or reflexes kicked in, but I saved a crab's life. That's how, even though I'm a man, I saved a crab's life with my boobs. This next part is going to sound hard to believe, so what you have to remember is I'm on antipsychotics for a reason. I've had psychosis before, and the psychiatrist thinks I have bipolar. Even though I'm a man, I tried go-go dancing in a go-go cage, and the go-go cage was suspended high up in the air, so I could dance around without stepping on any insects on the ground. What led me to doing this? Well, when no one's watching, I dance around a lot in my house. I feel like I dance around so much that I'd probably be quite good at it from all the practice. I go to a mental health service that runs various groups. Once a week they have a dancing group. I always felt too uncomfortable to dance in public, and so I didn't go there, and part of me really wanted to try hard and become more comfortable around people and unmask my autism, to the point I felt like dancing. I'd also really wanted to go to a nightclub, but I haven't drank any alcohol in 7 years, and I haven't taken any other substances in that time either. Originally, this was because with my OCD, I worried if I was drunk, I may not have my inhibitions, and I worried I may do something terrible. Years later, I am glad I quit drinking, because it is very common to have substance issues with bipolar, and I'm not drinking, and me not drinking is good for my mental health, as I used to have issues myself with substances. Anyway, this all meant normally I'd feel very uncomfortable in a nightclub being sober. If it was crowded, I would worry I was accidentally staring at people, and I would not know where to look. Up until that point, I really wanted to be able to feel comfortable dancing in public and comfortable going to nightclubs. Then I became fully manic. I finally felt confident enough to dance in public, and I could go to a nightclub without taking anything because I was high on life. Being in mania meant I felt comfortable enough to unmask my autism. I could finally be myself, and that brought me so much joy that I wanted to take it to the next level. I started going to nightclubs. I was dancing every night, and when you're in mania, you just don't get tired. So I was just dancing all night, like every night, and it just didn't even feel tired because I had so much energy. So eventually I came across a nightclub that had an old cage suspended in the air. I asked what it was for, and they said it was a go-go cage that used to be used for go-go dancers. Before I tell you the next part, what you have to remember is with mania you can have inflated self-esteem and inflated confidence, and you can also have hypersexuality. So naturally, I thought I was the sexiest man alive, and that I wanted to strut my stuff and express myself. The person in charge was not going to let me in the cage. With bipolar, you can also spend lots of money, so I kept trying to pay the man more and more and more, till eventually they caved in and let me dance in the go-go cage. I don't know if part of the cage was missing, hence why I had previously not been allowed in it, but on the bottom of the cage were bars spread out with lots of gaps, just small enough that my feet didn't fall through. That was another factor as to why I had wanted to go to dance in the cage, because it meant I would not harm insects, because it was suspended in the air. All I was standing on were thin bars with lots of gaps between them, so there was so my feet went in contact with much stuff. because of all the gaps. Because I was so manic, I wasn't that worried about my OCD, but I was aware that I wouldn't harm as many insects or mites, and I just thought that it was the most amazing opportunity that had ever happened to me. That's why, even though I'm a man, I briefly became a go-go dancer, dancing in a go-go cage, suspended in the air. Part 3. I worried about getting thousands of dust mites pregnant. This next part does not apply to everyone with OCD. However, some people with OCD do genuinely worry about getting people pregnant and attribute super abilities to sperm. For example, some people genuinely worry that if they sit on a toilet seat, they may get pregnant, or if anything gets on to clothes, and then their clothes touches someone else's clothes, then someone may get pregnant. People with OCD can just think sperm has super abilities, and that it's incredibly easy to accidentally get someone pregnant. And this is all a genuine thing that some people with OCD worry about. With my bipolar, I can have symptoms of depression and symptoms of mania at the same time, and this just gets called a mixed episode. So with depressive symptoms, so when you have depressive symptoms as well as manic symptoms, you can feel extreme anxiety and your OCD can be really bad, whereas with mania alone, your OCD and anxiety may not be too bad. At the same time though, with mania, you have bizarre ideas. For example, if normally with OCD, you are rationally worried about being attracted to certain humans, during a mixed episode, you irrationally worry about being attracted to mites, geological formations, and atoms. If you normally worry about bodily sensations with OCD, and this can just get called sensory motor OCD, during a mixed episode, you have the sensation of having the tail of a microscopic arachnid called a palpigrade. And these are things that I've really worried about during a mixed episode. When the mania gives me bizarre thoughts, and I'm not even making this up. This is genuinely things I've worried about. Now, I don't do anything inappropriate, but at the same time, you can't help your dreams. There can be millions of dust mites in your bed, and I had a strange and exciting dream, and I had the worry afterwards, what if I've just got hundreds of dust mites pregnant? Either because I'm on an antipsychotic, or because the mania was not severe enough to cause psychosis, I still had some insight, so I thought I might have got hundreds of dust mites pregnant, and I obsessively worried about it. But I knew there was still some possibility that I was just worrying about this because of my OCD. If I was in psychosis, this would have been a firm belief, and you could not have been talked out of it, which is what a delusion is. So I constantly worried, is there evidence I could have got the dust mites pregnant? Or is this just my OCD? Now, I thought this was unlikely, that I would have got the dust mites pregnant. But with OCD, you need 100% certainty. So I compulsively researched hybrids. Apparently, there's actually a hybrid between a sturgeonfish and a paddlefish. Those fishes belong to separate biological families. So even though I knew it was unlikely I could get hundreds, if not thousands, of dust mites pregnant, I just needed to be sure. I couldn't stop thinking about it until I was absolutely 100% sure. I looked at fern plants because they can hybridize a lot. I could not stop researching. That's why I worried I'd got thousands of dust mites pregnant. In the past, when I was in full-blown mania and I had a psychosis, I thought I was various people or characters. How may psychosis and autism interact? In mania psychosis, someone may think they're a different human, like Harry Potter or Jesus. With autism, you can personify inanimate objects and animals. This means you can view mites, worms, or even rocks as though they're people and feel empathy towards them. So when my autism and psychosis combined, because mites are like people to me, I thought I was a mite called an orobatid mite. Orobatid mites get called box mites because they can retract their head and legs a bit like a tortoise. Because I thought I was an orobatid mite, I was running around with my head and legs retracted into my red t-shirt. I've got footage from then. During mania, I felt extremely irritable, as if I could not be in the same house as my family. I just wanted to be out the house, so I ran out the house in the middle of the night with my head and arms tucked into my t-shirt. It felt so urgent that I did not even lock the door. I just felt like I had to get out. My mum is pink and squidgy, like an earthworm. Here's why, even though I'm a man, my favourite colour is pink. My other favourite colour is red because of how bold and intense it is. I love red because of my autism. Liking red is a sensory thing. Pink is basically red, just a bit lighter. I love pink because it has nice connotations. Pink has connotations of femininity, nurturing, compassion, loving, kindness, and being caring, sweet, playful, and sensitive, and passive, which I am quite passive and playful. I want to be all those connotations and traits. Pink is comforting, and it's even more comforting when you have autism, and it's a sensory thing. My special interests are rocks, amoebas, worms, including parasitic worms, mites, and my mum. I love squidgy things with my autism. It's a sensory thing. Pink is a very rare colour in nature, which makes it more special when you see pink animals. My mum has a skin condition called rosacea that makes her face bright pink. Earthworms and my mum are pink and squidgy. I love to progressively squeeze my mum tighter and tighter until I physically cannot squeeze her any tighter. I always say, tell me if this starts to hurt when I gradually squeeze tighter and tighter, but she never says it hurts. My mum also has a very squidgy face. I try to be extremely delicate with earthworms though. With autism, you can also have special interests in people as well as objects and animals. Maybe I love earthworms and my mum and had special interests in both earthworms and my mum, partly for the reason that they're both pink and squidgy. My mum's face is pink for an amazing reason. Her skin condition rosacea is associated with having more face mites living on you. I told my mum that, and she actually went months without picking her nose because she worried she'd spread mites. I love soft pastel pinks and hot pinks and magentas. My mum's personality matches the connotations of the colour pink as well. My mum is basically my sensory toy because they're pink, squidgy and fluffy. I even call my mum my little earthworm as a term of affection. That's why even as a man, my favourite colour is pink. Shh, 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 shh. I need to tell you something while no one's listening in. They're always watching me. I'm not the real David. I'm David from a parallel universe. My life is 90% similar to the real David's life. That's why this video is only 90% true. Because I'm parallel David. I'm very similar to David, but not quite David. No one believes me. No, they just think I'm crazy. Mites look like little red dots, just like every universe in the multiverse. My parallel universe is becoming made of mites. Just like in the real universe, I have a girlfriend made of mites. We live in a house made of mites, in a desert with dunes made of mites. We even have a baby made of mites. The government and scientists won't acknowledge the existence of other universes, but I know better. I'm a genius. I have created a groundbreaking theory on the multiverse, but the government are trying to hunt me down and silence me. My ideas are too amazing. They tried to keep aliens secret, and the government are trying to keep parallel universes a secret. The universes are each like a red soap bubble, each made of red mites and red galaxies. If you want to know what my mental health is like in the real universe, check out my other videos, because this whole video is only 90% true. Whereas my other video on mites is 100% true. Part 4.
The real David has autism, OCD, and possibly bipolar and maladaptive daydreaming, but I'm David from a parallel universe. I have other conditions like mirror touch synesthesia. When I see insects, mites, or worms being harmed, it actually feels like I'm being harmed myself. I actually feel physical pain. I once saw someone rip an earthworm in half because they thought the two halves would grow into two new earthworms. I actually felt the pain as if I had been pulled so hard that I ripped in half. How is this? Well, in the brain there are nerve cells which get called neurons, and neurons form connections with each other, and the connections are called synapses. In normal people's brains, some synapses are destroyed as these connections are deemed not as necessary. The destroying of synapses is called synaptic pruning. In autistic brains, the connections or synapses may not be destroyed as much. This means people with autism may have more connections in their brain between neurons. People with synesthesia may also have more synapses or connections in their brains. Because autism and synesthesia are both associated with less synaptic pruning and therefore more connections in their brains, people with autism are more likely to have synesthesia than the general population. Personifying or attributing human-like characteristics to objects or animals can be common in people with synesthesia as well as autism. One type of synesthesia is called mirror touch synesthesia, where if someone else is touched or hurt, you feel the sensation of touch or pain as if it's happening to you. Some people with mirror touch synesthesia can even feel being touched when an inanimate object or an animal is touched. People with mirror touch synesthesia can be very empathetic because of this. That's why when I feel an earthworm being stretched in half, I feel as though my body is being tugged at and torn and stretched until I am physically pulled in half. Every time an insect or mite is stood on, I feel as though I've been squashed and flattened, and it feels really painful. I feel a deep pressure on my body as if something extremely heavy, like a giant boot, is pushing me down. It's like there is no boundary between me and the animals. How did I become a bug assassin where I kill insects, mites, and worms? With autism, your special interests can change, and I no longer felt interested in animals. Your values can change over the course of your life, and this means with OCD, the things you worry about can change to a different theme. So I was no longer interested in tiny creatures, and I didn't worry about harming them anymore. My mom has the skin condition rosacea, where her face is pink. While I like her face being pink, rosacea is genetic, and my face kept getting redder. Most people have tiny face mites living on their face. Rosacea, however, is associated with more Demodex face mites living on your face. I used to have really bad body dysmorphia as a teenager, and my body dysmorphia resurfaced. This time, it was about having a red face. I no longer cared about mites. In fact, I actively disliked them, now for possibly giving me rosacea. With OCD, you have insight and know it's not mites' fault that you worry about them. But with body dysmorphia, you have less insight. This means I thought it was all mites' fault. They did this to me. I looked bright pink. I am ugly, and because earthworms are pink like me, they are ugly too. They have no bone structure or cheekbones. I find myself constantly comparing myself to earthworms, as if because they resemble me, my feelings of ugliness extend to them. I used to think earthworms were really cute, and I loved their colour. but now they irritate me because they're ugly and I look like them. So I must be ugly too. I have no cheeks, just like worms have no cheekbones. I began to actively dislike earthworms. I had a friend who became a surgeon and thought they had antisocial personality disorder. I don't have many friends, and so I got in touch with them and became part of their friendship group again. I had got in with the wrong crowd, and it had rubbed off on me. I was no longer as caring. If I ever had mirror touch synesthesia, it was a lot stronger with humans. I did personify tiny creatures and feel empathy for them, but it was more that when I felt their pain, the autism meant I could not filter out this sense, and the obsessing about it with OCD amplified the empathy. I started to believe that because earthworms had only 10,000 nerve cells, whereas humans have nearly 200 billion nerve cells, that if worms did experience anything, it was minute. Mites are tiny, you can't fit many nerve cells in a mite. I thought mites had even less chance of ever feeling anything or being conscious. I hated pink earthworms with no defined features, and I hated mites for possibly giving me rosacea. I had had enough. I thought worms on the sidewalk are already in poor condition. Even if you rescue them, they might not be well enough to survive. So I thought, I'll put them out of their misery and stomp on them with my boot. I thought it was a quicker death, and therefore more moral. But I got a taste for blood. I kept stepping on worms. I thought there's nothing going on in mites' heads, I'll step on them too. That's how in a parallel universe I became the worm and mite assassin. I always viewed earthworms and mites as an extension of myself. I would not harm other humans, but I am very nasty to myself and punish myself. It feels bad, the idea of being nasty to other people, but it does not feel like there's anything wrong with being nasty to yourself. Because I view tiny creatures as an extension of myself, harming them feels more like harming myself than harming other people. I had become enmeshed with the worms and mites. That's what made harming them feel okay. The opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is apathy. Intense love is actually very similar to intense hate, and people can switch between intense love and intense hate easily. That's why cute aggression exists. That's why I hate mites and earthworms, even though I loved them. What led me to this belief? A couple years ago, I felt a bit less depressed, but I'd been thinking, life is still suffering. People have war and injuries and diseases. We have painkillers, anesthetics, and treatments. But making humans' lives better has been at the expense of the environment and animals who don't have any of humans' luxuries. The universe is amazing, but maybe if nothing existed in the universe, nothing would be better than something. Maybe depression makes you biased, but humans are designed to survive. We may be even more biased towards living. I still feel a bit depressed and hopeless and apathy. This led me to later becoming radicalized into an ideology that believes humans have a moral responsibility to wipe out all life on Earth. That is why I am going to wipe out all life on Earth, because it is morally the right thing to do. By killing worms and mites, I'm alleviating suffering. Then everything in the multiverse began turning into mites. I turned into mites. I looked like I was made up of little red dots. I realized what it was like to be mites, and mites seemed all right about life. They did not have the same pessimistic outlook on life. Mites and earthworms are like an extension of myself, and I had been projecting my own suffering and view of life onto them. To an extent, I had been projecting my experience of life onto other people. I hated worms and mites because I hated myself.
depression and mental health warps and distorts your perspective on life. And if you could see what it is like to be other people, then you would realize not everyone experiences life in the same way, and not everyone shares your perspective. If you watching are struggling with mental health, hopefully if things get better, you will feel more hopeful and optimistic about life. Eventually everything changed back to not being made of mites. After experiencing what it is like to be mites, I never killed earthworms or mites again. Part 5. Trigger warning: alcohol and substance misuse.
Here's why I turn yellow from liver damage. I entered another mixed episode where I had the severe anxiety and OCD of a depressive episode, but mixed with the bizarre thoughts and impulsivity and lack of consequences associated with a manic episode. I entered into psychosis. I felt so guilty about previously harming mites and worms. I could never harm them again. What if there are water mites in drinking water? I could never drink water again. This was a bizarre idea I had with mania which overlapped with my OCD anxiety. I had heard that some animals could get all their water from their food alone. I tried not eating anything salty and not putting any salt on my food, or it would dehydrate me. I even drank my urine because there's no creatures in that, and that would rehydrate me. There's water in tea and coffee. I could not slowly boil mice live in a kettle. I felt so thirsty that I needed to feel some liquid in my throat. There is water in nearly every type of drink. Absinthe is nearly pure alcohol, and not much water at all. Absinthe was all my OCD would let me drink. I impulsively drank it to numb the severe distress and uncomfortableness of a mixed episode. It was a bizarre idea I had because of mania, and I could not think about consequences. The absence would just make me more dehydrated, but the absence would make me drunk enough that I would not feel anxious or care about my OCD anymore. This meant when I was drunk, I would drink an extreme amount of water because my OCD had temporarily gone. When I sobered up, my OCD returned, and I would feel so guilty and anxious that I vowed to never drink water again. I would become really dehydrated from not drinking water again. I would drink absinthe again this time, which is nearly all alcohol. I would get drunk again. My OCD and anxiety would temporarily go away because I was drunk, so I'd drink lots of water. I'd drink loads and loads of water. I'd sober up again. When sober, my OCD would return. I'd feel anxiety, shame and guilt. I'd vow to never drink water again, but I'd turn to alcohol again. I turned yellow with issues with my liver. I could not even shave my face, in case I killed the mites living on my face with the blade. I could not shave either because I had poor hygiene and could not do simple tasks because of the psychosis. This was a very dark time in my life. And with the depression and the mixed episode, I also felt like I wanted to wither away, and that's partially why I stopped drinking water as well. I used to be really muscly, but when I was nearly 18, I was put on an antipsychotic. I thought it might lower testosterone, so there's no point working out, and my OCD had put me off anything to do with relationships, so it did not matter how good I looked, and my body dysmorphia went away a bit. But what if I'd kept working out, or if I'd started working out again? With my OCD, I did not want to harm any animals, so I tried to go vegan. The issue is, I have sensory sensitivities to food with my autism. I don't like any plants with protein in, like peas, beans, or nuts. I needed to get my protein from somewhere. I still rescued worms, but I had always wondered what they tasted like. They eat soil. Does that mean they taste of soil? Earthworms have so much protein that it occurred to me that they would help my bodybuilding. With having a special interest in earthworms, I was so curious about what they tasted like, and I thought cows and chickens may have a much larger capacity for pain and suffering,
and cows and chickens might be a lot more intelligent or conscious than worms. Also, eating insects is much better for the environment, so I thought eating earthworms would be good for the environment too. I could not kill a worm though. Then, when on my walk, I found a dead earthworm on the pavement. I thought, I don't know how long it's been dead, and it could have had some diseases. So I brought it home and cooked the earthworm to destroy any diseases. I ended up cooking earthworms to get gains. I did not want to have this tough, manly, big, imposing, dominant, masculine, alpha male body. I wanted to be sweet and sensitive and have a feminine side. So I tried to be really skinny and slim and dainty and petite, but really muscly at the same time. Sometimes there were not many worms, so eating dead worms led me to eating worms that were in pain and going to die anyway, because I couldn't be too picky because there weren't that many worms. I put the worms out of their misery, and that's partly how I became the worm killer. Luckily, I changed my ways, though, when I became made of mice and vowed never to kill mice or worms again.
Here's how I turned orange and no-scoped a pigeon. So I had rosacea and turned pink, but then I had liver problems and turned yellow. The liver problems got a bit better, so I was not as yellow, but I was still red with rosacea. So I became orange, a mix between red and yellow. I was now nearly bald. I was still in a mixed episode with psychosis. I had empathy for the earthworms because of my autism, and attributed human characteristics to worms because of my autism. OCD made me feel hyper-responsible for worms and hyper-moral towards them. Mentalizing is the ability to attribute thoughts, feelings, and intentions to other people. With mania and psychosis, you can hypermentalize, and when this mixes with autism and OCD, you can attribute thoughts, feelings, and intentions to worms even more than usual. You can also feel more connected during mania, and this means there is no boundary between worms and yourself. You feel more effective empathy during mania, which means you actually feel worms' feelings more, even though you may not cognitively understand what they're feeling as well. OCD meant all my thoughts were towards earthworms. I was so overwhelmed with my own emotions in a mixed episode that I could not bear to see an earthworm in distress or pain on top of my own feelings. Then I saw a pigeon. By this point I had acquired a BB gun. Apparently a pigeon will occasionally eat an earthworm. The pigeon was looking at the earthworm. I grabbed the BB gun. Oxytocin, a hormone involved with looking after babies, can make you act loving towards your baby, but they can also make you more aggressive to anything that threatens your baby. I have high prolactin, which is associated with having a baby. Earthworms are like my babies. I wonder if prolactin makes you more aggressive towards anything that threatens your baby. The pigeon was threatening the worm. It had been a very hot and dry summer. There had been no earthworms around. Earthworms were dying, while pigeons are so abundant. They're everywhere. I had been watching a documentary where a person shot grey squirrels, so the grey squirrels did not harm endangered red squirrels. There are 30 species of earthworms in the UK. I thought with the weather, a species of earthworm might die out. Pigeons as a species will be fine if one is hurt. I held the BB gun in my hands. I shot at the pigeon through my window before it had the chance to eat the worm. I did not use the scope on my BB gun, so technically I no-scoped a bird to save a worm. The pigeon flew off. It would have momentarily hurt the pigeon, but the bird was fine, and so was the worm. Maybe oxytocin and prolactin make you more empathetic towards your in-group, which is worms, and less empathetic towards your out-group, which is pigeons. With mania and hypermentalizing, there was no boundary between me and the worm. It was like I myself was being attacked. I was already so overwhelmed that I had snapped. With a mixed episode, you can feel extreme agitation and irritability and anger.
With mania, you can be impulsive and not think about consequences. I was so impulsive that it was hard to use stop skills. The worm would have died. I did not have time to think about what I was doing. I was just so angry. The psychosis meant that I had less insight into my OCD, and the OCD became more delusional. Mentalizing includes self-reflection and inferences and ideas about yourself and others. With psychosis and mania, I was hypermentalizing. I came up with so many inferences and ideas about myself and others that I could not keep up with them or weight the ideas according to how accurate or reasonable they were. I had no insight, and shooting the pigeons to save an earthworm seemed reasonable. With psychosis, you can be very impressionable and think you're people off the TV, or imitate things off TV. I thought I was the person in the documentary shooting grey squirrels to save red squirrels. Also with psychosis and OCD, voices in your head can tell you to engage in OCD compulsions like saving worms. The voices told me to shoot the pigeon. However, when psychosis goes away, you still have OCD compulsions around saving worms. You just no longer have voices. With mania and psychosis, the earthworm's negative feelings felt more emotionally real to me. Their feelings seemed more human-like with autism. With hypermentalizing, I came up with so many inferences about how the worm was feeling that I could not accurately evaluate the inferences. The worm felt like a real human, and I could not reality test this feeling. Part 6. Years ago, I brought some rocks into my house to draw on. Later, I stopped bringing rocks inside my house in case there were tiny creatures living on the rocks or a tiny amount of soil on the rocks containing tiny creatures. I started to think that if I brought rocks into my house, tiny creatures would get into my house, where the tiny creatures would become less happy or die because they were no longer outside in their natural environment. This meant when I created my pet rock, I had to use a rock that I'd already brought into the house years ago. I therefore had limited options. What if in the parallel universe, I had brought a different rock from the same pile in my garden into my house? I had to make that different rock into my pet rock because I could not bring a different rock into my house. The parallel universe's version of my pet rock is actually the same shape as my normal pet rock, just as if it had been elongated. In the real world, I pretend that my rock has borderline personality disorder, but in the parallel universe, my rock also has OCD as well as borderline personality disorder. In the parallel universe, the parallel version of me gave my pet rock OCD, as I was projecting my own mental health onto the rock. While lots of people with both borderline personality disorder and OCD may be very different from each other, here is how the pet rock's two conditions interact. Borderline personality disorder may stereotypically be seen as outwardly expressing strong emotions. However, some people with borderline personality disorder express their emotions internally and would rather act inwards rather than act outwards. With borderline personality disorder, there can be a lot of guilt and shame, and when the person has quiet borderline, they can take all their pain out on themselves, and this can make them feel more shame and guilt, because those emotions are directed at themselves. OCD can also make you feel a lot of shame and guilt, where you can worry about morality or hurting other people, and this can make you feel very responsible and hypermoral. This may partly contribute towards you feeling responsible for other people's feelings or amplify that. Borderline personality disorder can be caused by trauma, and growing up, it may not have been safe to outwardly express emotions. You may also become attuned to other people's feelings, where you take on everyone else's feelings but don't express your own feelings in case it upsets someone or negatively affects the other person's emotions. Because OCD can make you feel hyper-responsible for other people's emotions and hyper-moral, not wanting to ever upset anyone in the slightest, when people with borderline personality disorder have OCD as well, they might worry more about acting out and take out their emotions on themselves instead. shame and guilt can be directed at themselves, and they may feel a lot of shame and guilt, as is common for borderline personality disorder. OCD, however, can also cause shame and guilt and may amplify the shame and guilt. People with borderline personality disorder can be very critical of themselves or even abusive towards themselves, and when OCD adds extra shame and guilt, they may be even more harsh or punishing on to themselves. So OCD may partly contribute to or amplify someone expressing their borderline personality disorder inwardly. In New York, there can be tiny crustaceans in tap water called copepods. Jewish people are not allowed to eat crustaceans, so the tap water is not kosher. Because I heard this, I obsessively worried there were water mites in tap water. I was in psychosis and I thought, wait a minute, humans are 70% water. I must be 70% water mites. Water mites can be yellow, red, or blue. I am made of mites and I am colourful. Sandstone can be porous, so my pet rock was partly water, and therefore partly made of yellow, blue, and red water mites. Water is in everything. Water mites are in everything. People say I had developed a delusion that everything was made of water mites. With OCD, I obsessed about harming water mites, but people say my delusion made me think everything was made of water mites. I don't believe this. Everything is made of water mites. And this terrified me, all the water mites all around me. I'm from one parallel universe, but the whole multiverse was made of mites. Nowhere is safe from me. Everyone thinks I'm crazy. They say I'm in the real world, but I'm in a parallel universe. I'm not crazy. They're crazy. I'm made of mites, and so is everything. The mites are all around me. There is no escape or refuge from the mites. My pet rock has borderline personality disorder and OCD. But oftentimes, if someone meets criteria for one personality disorder, they meet criteria for another personality disorder, or can at least have traits of another personality disorder. In just the parallel universe, I pretend my pet rock also has features of schizotypal personality disorder. This contributes to their borderline personality disorder being quiet, as people with schizotypal personality disorder can outwardly express less emotions, which is known as blunted affect. People with borderline personality disorder can hate everything about someone or love everything about someone. This black and white thinking can be known as splitting. Because the parallel rock also has schizotypal personality disorder, their emotions may be flat. This means when their borderline personality disorder causes them to split on someone, instead of hating everything about someone, their schizotypal personality disorder causes them to feel apathy for the person they've split on. With schizotypal personality disorder, you can also think things similar to delusions, such as someone is trying to poison you. However, this is different from a delusion because people with schizotypal personality disorder can be talked out of their belief, whereas delusions are fixed beliefs. I had the delusion that I was made of water mites. Sometimes if two people believe the same delusion, they can reinforce each other, and there is a name for this, called folie à deux. Could this happen with my pet rock, where they also begin believing they are made of water mites, and we reinforce each other's belief? Well, I might believe with certainty that I am made of water mites, whereas my pet rock may not be certain they are made of water mites. Maybe we would reinforce each other's beliefs, but I am not sure. While I am not usually a dominant or controlling person, rocks are so passive they find it hard even talking or moving. So I may more easily transfer or impose my belief onto the rock. I would never control another human, as it would not be nice for them, but I am extremely controlling of myself. A rock is a possession, an extension of yourself, rather than another person. If you're controlling towards yourself, and a pet rock is an extension of yourself, then you can be controlling towards the rock. The rock was so passive that it could not challenge my belief. Part 7. Here's how I got a sex change, then went back in time and became my own mom. The condition rosacea is genetic, and like my mum, I had developed rosacea. With rosacea, sometimes my face looks pink, red, or even sometimes purple. Rosacea is associated with a greater number of Demodex mites living on your face. Previously, I grew a long beard and long hair so that I did not harm face mites with sharp razor blades or scissors. It was partly because I had poor hygiene with psychosis. I also wanted to keep my hair long because I looked so masculine and manly with my beard that I had to counteract the beard with feminine long hair. Then I went bald. I associate being bald even more with masculinity and being manly, as men are more stereotypically bald. I had to counteract the baldness and have long hair associated with being a woman. But when men have long hair, it's usually more wavy and looks more masculine, especially when combined with a beard. I wanted to straighten my hair and get a fringe so I looked more feminine. But my OCD would not let me burn mites with a hair straightener or give me a fringe by chopping up mites with a sharp pair of scissors. My mum takes the antipsychotic olanzapine, and it was suggested I should try that because olanzapine was effective for my mum and I share her genetics, so it might work better with me. I had previously wanted to stay on the antipsychotic risperidone and not switch to olanzapine. Risperidone can be used to treat irritability in autism, whereas I'm not sure there's as much evidence that olanzapine treats that aspect of autism. I did not want to be irritable or take my emotions out on my family. Risperidone also increases prolactin more than olanzapine, and prolactin may make you more caring, as it's associated with having a baby. By risperidone increasing prolactin, increased prolactin may lead to less testosterone. I wanted less testosterone, as I did not want to be more aggressive or dominant or sex-obsessed or only care about sex. The issue was, in the last parts of this video, I had been psychotic, but if I increased my dose of risperidone, it would raise my prolactin to dangerous levels. I had to switch to olanzapine to make my psychosis go away. I felt so conflicted. My hormones on risperidone may make me harm people less, but on risperidone, I might be more psychotic. And when I was psychotic, I shot a pigeon, and so did harm creatures. Both risperidone and olanzapine can help mood, but I can't take a higher dose of risperidone because it would make my prolactin too high. Being so depressed on risperidone was what led me to the pessimistic view that life was all negative, and if nothing existed, if I killed all life on Earth, including earthworms and mites, then no life would be better than life's suffering. I no longer held that view, but risperidone made me deliberately harm earthworms and mites because I was so depressed. If I switched to olanzapine, I could be less depressed and have a more positive worldview. Risperidone may also make OCD worse when compared with olanzapine. If I switched to olanzapine, my OCD might be better, but without OCD, would I care less about harming insects and mites? I wanted and desired to get better. I longed to get better, but I obsessively worried changing to olanzapine would make me more likely to harm people and animals. Then I broke a bone. Prolactin can make your bones weaker. With autism, I am so sensitive to pain and gore. That was the final straw. I switched to olanzapine, the same medication my mom is on for her bipolar. My psychosis stopped. I'm fine now. My OCD and depression improved. All my friends were female, and even when my OCD got better, I still acted feminine. I shaved my beard and head and got a wig. Long-haired wigs are cheaper, and I had grown to like having long hair. I got a wig with a fringe and straight hair though. Even without OCD, I still felt feminine. Without OCD anxiety distorting my perception of myself, I realized that I was in fact trans, and being a woman deep down inside had driven my compulsions. I had to act feminine because I worried that I wasn't feminine. and I had to prove to myself that I was feminine and a real woman. I had a pink face like my mum. I had long straight hair and a fringe like my mum. My personality was really similar to my mum. I even now took the same medication as my mum. My mum even also has bipolar. I realised I was my mum. I cloned myself and then went back in time to raise the clone that would become me when it grew up. I was my own mum and raised myself and proved that I was caring. So I turned into my mum, went back in time, and then brought myself up. I'm not crazy, you're crazy. This is true no matter how many times you tell me it's not. I was my own mum, and with rosacea, sometimes my mum's face looks the colour of beetroot. I was on HRT for being transgender. The HRT did not make my facial hair entirely go away. I still had a bit of a beard. My real mum is on HRT as well, but supposedly for the menopause. My mum also has some chin hair. I was on HRT like my mum, and I had a beard like my mum. I was my mum. I was my own mum. Maybe I became my mum because just like I feel no boundary between myself and mites and worms, I felt no boundary between me and my mum. I do think sometimes men have long hair that is more messy than women who sometimes have perfectly straight long hair, as well as a fringe. Maybe my idea of femininity and gender comes from being raised by my mum, and her as a role model. Maybe I associate all the positive traits, like being compassionate and caring, with women because I associate those traits with my mum. Maybe that's why, when I transitioned, I wore a wig that looked like my mum's hair, because I associated femininity with my mum and wanted to have all her positive traits. With OCD, if you're not transgender, you can worry you are transgender. However, if you are actually transgender and also have OCD, you can worry that you're not transgender. Deep down, I've always been a woman, but I worried I was not a woman, and that's partly why I had to perform all the compulsions, like wearing high heels. I had to prove to the OCD that I was a woman. If I wore high heels, I must be a woman. Wearing high heels reassured me that I was a woman. Constantly seeking reassurance can be part of OCD. How did my autism lead me to transitioning and then going back in time and becoming my own mom? Gender is a social construct, and autism affects social functioning. So autistic people may have atypical social functioning and therefore develop atypical gender. Because of my autism, I find identifying emotions difficult. Autism affects your senses, and this can affect your ability to sense your bodily sensations, like a heartbeat or a gut feeling in the response to an emotion. This means I don't get any bodily sensations in response to emotions. I feel extreme emotions, just not in my body. Autism can also cause something called alexithymia, which also makes it hard to process and describe their emotions. Because autism affects how you understand your feelings, it affects how you understand your feelings towards gender. A lot of autistic people identify with no gender or both genders. My mum always wears trousers instead of a skirt. I am my mum, and while I identify with a lot of feminine traits, I also prefer wearing trousers like a man rather than a skirt. Autistic people sometimes don't care as much about social norms and can go against the grain. This can affect how they express gender, and they may go against gender norms. Gender roles have never made sense to me. I think there's a lot of gender roles and double standards that negatively affect women, but I also think there are gender roles and double standards that negatively affect men. Men have to be tough and hard and act manly. They have to show no emotions or not cry. They have to be dominant and they have to be the rock in the relationship. I basically don't like double standards, and I feel like people on both sides of the political spectrum can be hypocritical and have double standards. So when I went back in time and became my mum, I identified with feminine traits, but I also still wore trousers all the time, like you'd associate with being a man. I'm going to raise myself the best I can. Here's the child version of me, giving the adult version of me a cuddle and squeezing me until my eyes pop out. Part 8. I used to not like the idea of having stereotypically male interests. I did not like the idea of liking engineering or construction. Of course, there's no reason why a woman couldn't be just as good, if not better, at engineering. But I associated engineering with men, even though there is probably now a lot of female engineers. I wanted to connect to women, and I wanted stereotypically female interests to do so. I tried to avoid or suppress any interest in stereotypically male things. I sort of saw engineers as having some intelligence, but no emotional intelligence. Times had changed now, and it seemed there were lots of female physicists. I actually used to like quantum mechanics when I was 14. I now thought physics isn't necessarily just a masculine thing. Before I went back in time, I now wanted to be a particle physicist. With my autism, I attributed human-like characteristics to particles. They were so tiny and depicted as round. Tiny round things are cute. With autism, sometimes you can be more interested in objects and things than you are people. Of course, sometimes you can also be interested in people and psychology as well. I liked objects and things, and atoms were my special interest, and I was around them all the time. So OCD lashed onto the things I cared about, like particles. I was in a mixed episode. I had the more negative, self-critical thoughts of depression, combined with the more bizarre, unrealistic thoughts of mania. With depression and OCD, I had false attraction OCD, where I worried I was attracted to people that I was not actually attracted to. When this combined with mania, I started worrying I was attracted to more bizarre and unrealistic things, like atoms. I cared about atoms and valued them so much, and OCD tried to use this against me. OCD tried to interfere with my livelihood. OCD tries to invade every aspect of your life, and atoms were my life. Here are some OCD thoughts I've genuinely had in real life while being in a mixed episode. Everything may be made out of atoms and particles, but there is also a theory in physics called string theory that proposes everything is made out of tiny strings instead of particles. I'm having intrusive thoughts about a girlfriend made of subatomic strings. I'm worried I'm attracted to subatomic strings. Electrons can orbit an atom's center in what's called p orbitals that look round. Imagine if the atom was conscious and the p orbitals were made of flesh. I like soft, squidgy, fatty lumps because of their sensory aspect. I worry I'm being perverted and like the atom's electron orbitals because they look like boobs. But round things are cute and have soft, soothing shapes and edges, so I probably just like electron orbitals in an innocent way. Helium hydride is a helium atom bonded to a hydrogen atom. Helium hydride may be the oldest compound in the universe, so I drew a helium hydride with lots of wrinkles and folds and loose fat like an old person. I like loose fat, like on people's arms or neck. Old people have the best loose fat to play with. People who weigh more have more fat. I worry my love of loose fat is a sexual thing, because boobs are loose fat. However, this is just my OCD making me irrationally worry. If it really was a sexual thing, I would be dating obese 80-year-olds, which I'm not. It is interesting, though, how your autistic love of sensory things like loose fat can confuse you into thinking you're attracted to someone. This is because if you get an intrusive image of a boob, you're going to like the sensory aspect related to loose fat, And the OCD is going to make you confuse this for being attracted to them and being perverted. I have intrusive images about atoms. The issue is, I think about my videos all day, so if my videos are drawing intrusive images, I'm going to think about those thoughts all day. Then that makes me think I'm more perverted, which makes my OCD worse. Because my OCD is then more prominent, I am more likely to make videos about the OCD, and the cycle repeats and reinforces itself.
I loved particles so much with my autistic special interest that I mistook this feeling for being in love with them. I worried I liked them too much, and I worried I was sexually attracted to them. With mania, you can feel even more love and joy, and this made me mistake this love and joy for being in love and attracted with atoms. I work as a particle physicist all day, so the OCD is always constantly on my mind. My job was always a constant reminder of my OCD, and it kept the OCD in the forefront of my mind. While working as a particle physicist, I discovered a new particle, just like I had to protect tiny cute round mites that looked like little dots. I had to protect tiny cute time particles that were oversimplified and depicted as little round things and dots as well. If anything happened to the particles, humanity would lose out on a life-changing discovery. I cared for the particles like mites and worms until one day I figured out how to create more time particles. The time particles helped give the universe entropy and caused the flow of time. The time particles sent me back in time, and that's how I became my own man. The trip back in time fried my brain, and my mind became very simple, like my mum's.
Because I'm transgender, try and sound more like me mum. I love that me mum has a squidgy face and chubby cheeks. Her face is like Play-Doh, and I like to play with it like Play-Doh. I like to call me mum Play-Doh face. She's just squidgy in general. I like squidgy things with my autism. It's a sensory thing. On HRT or hormone replacement therapy for being transgender, my underlying bone structure stayed the same. My fat distribution changed, so I had less fat around my jaw and more fat around my cheeks. I always wanted cheeks. Not having cheeks was part of me body dysmorphia. I had chubby, squidgy cheeks just like me mum. I had became my own mum. But I'm going to have to go now. I've got myself to raise.
Part 9.
I used to be interested in mites, and I used to think I was made of water mites that can be yellow, blue and red in real life. I no longer believed the delusion that I was made of mites, and my interest in mites ceased to exist. I lived on, but the mite part of me died. Skeletons are made of the mineral hydroxyapatite, but my skeleton was made of hydroxyapamite with an M, as in might. With autism, your special interest can make up so much of your identity. With autism, objects and animals feel like people. Having OCD obsessions and compulsions around mites make them even more part of your identity. OCD makes you care for mites. They're like your babies. With maladaptive daydreaming, you daydream all the time about your special interest, which in this case was mites. With mania, your special interest is intensified, and you love mites and connect with them even more and feel more joy around them, and it just feels so intense. With mania and OCD combined, you worry you're attracted to mites. The false attraction feels so real even though it's not. That part of you confuses it for love, and it actually feels like love. My videos are on mites, and you cannot separate my videos from my ego. If my videos are not good, I am not good.
Mites are such a big part of my life and my identity that when my OCD gets better, or the theme of OCD changes, when my special interest in mites changes, mites are a part of me, and I will grieve the mite part of me. I will feel sad, depressed, and empty, and insecure about my identity, inadequate without mites. I would feel insignificant, as if I was physically smaller, because a large piece was missing out of me. My special interest in mites died. The last interest I had before my gender transitioned was mites, and the last delusion I had was that I was made of mites. When I grieve my past gender, when I grieve my masculinity, I grieve mites. They're too interlinked. But part of me is not really dying, part of me is evolving. Now that I've transitioned, I am more confident in presenting feminine, and I can still wear trousers instead of a skirt without worrying I'm not feminine. I felt confident enough in my femininity that when I transitioned, I adopted the stereotypically masculine hobby of particle physics, and that replaced my interest in mites.
Just like my masculine voice may have died, my interest in mites may have died, but when I raise myself, the child who is me will eventually become interested in mites. I am interested in whatever my child is interested in, and I became indirectly interested in mites again. My gender and interests have evolved, and I was sort of interested in mites again, just in a different way.
In the real world, I pretend my pet rock has borderline personality disorder. In the parallel universe that this video takes place in, I pretend my rock has OCD as well as borderline personality disorder. With both OCD and borderline personality disorder, you can have difficulty tolerating uncertainty. Because the rock has both conditions, both of these conditions may stem from the same underlying factor of not being able to tolerate uncertainty. With OCD, you can have difficulty tolerating uncertainty. You may have lots of compulsions around mites and worms, so that you feel 100% certain you're not going to harm any tiny creatures. But 100% certainty about anything is impossible. Tiny creatures are everywhere. You're always going to harm some tiny creatures without meaning to. With OCD, you might care about being a nice, moral person, and you might worry about upsetting someone. You might feel you need to be 100% perfectly moral and perfectly nice. However, everyone occasionally upsets someone. Really good people still do bad things. You can't tolerate the uncertainty that you might have done something bad, because you have to be 100% certain that you're a good person, and you need to seek more and more reassurance to confirm that. No matter how much you think about past events or how many times people tell you that you did not do anything wrong, you're never going to be 100% certain that you did nothing wrong. With borderline personality disorder, you can also have difficulty tolerating uncertainty. This can be around relationships like friendships or romantic relationships. For example, some borderline personality disorder behaviours, like sending loads and loads and loads of texts, may superficially seem like attention seeking. People with borderline, however, can have a big fear of abandonment or rejection. They also feel extreme emotions. Their emotions can feel intolerable or really painful. They can feel these extreme emotions because they feel someone may be rejecting them or abandoning them. There is uncertainty whether the person actually is rejecting them or abandoning them. And so there can be lots of behaviours to reduce uncertainty, like sending a lot of texts. People with borderline can grow up in unstable environments. This means unstable environments are more familiar and therefore predictable. When someone with borderline is in a stable relationship, it may feel unfamiliar and harder to predict. Unpredictability means uncertainty, and that can feel unsafe. Similar to how someone with OCD may do a compulsion to neutralize uncertainty. People with borderline may do something to neutralize uncertainty, like sending lots of texts. So the Rock in the parallel universe has both OCD and borderline personality disorder, and both can involve intolerance to uncertainty. Transdiagnostic factors are when you have multiple mental health conditions and more than one of your conditions may be driven by the same underlying factor. This transdiagnostic factor could be intolerance to uncertainty. So the Rock has both OCD and borderline personality disorder because they have an underlying issue tolerating uncertainty. Because in the Rock, both conditions may be driven by fear of uncertainty, an underlying fear of uncertainty causes black and white thinking in both conditions. With OCD, you may think in black or white, all or nothing terms. When worrying about being a good person, you may think, I'm either an empath or a narcissist. You're all good or all bad. With borderline personality disorder, you can think someone else is all good and feel you love everything about that person. But you can also think someone is all bad and hate everything about that person. With borderline, these emotions can be intense, and it is hard to tolerate the mixed emotions or uncertainty of someone being both good and bad, so their mind collapses into all good or all bad, and this is known as splitting. With borderline, you can also split on yourself, where you might hate everything about yourself and feel a lot of shame and guilt. So with both borderline personality disorder and morality-themed OCD, you can see yourself as all good or all bad. And with both conditions, you can feel a lot of shame and guilt. In the case of the Rock, these behaviours and conditions may both be driven by an underlying difficulty tolerating uncertainty. I'd imagine if you had both OCD and borderline personality disorder, the conditions may interact with each other and produce some emergent properties. In the case of the fictional Rock, their borderline may mean that when there is a relationship issue, the Rock may split on themselves and see themselves as all bad, then feel intense shame and guilt and self-criticism. This may trigger the Rock's morality-themed OCD, when now they think they're a bad person and they feel even more shame, guilt and self-criticism on top of that. Just like in the parallel universe, in the real world, my interest in might will one day die too, and the might part of the real me will also turn into a skeleton made of mites. I maladaptive daydream that everything in the multiverse turned into mites, including the parallel universe, where in the story I had the delusion that I was made of water mites. Across the multiverse, there are skeletons that are remnants of the mite versions of me, when everything changed back to normal and stopped being made of mites.
When I turned into me mum, me interest in might stopped, and the might part of me died. Travelling back in time fried me brain, and now I don't even notice insects, mites or earthworms, and I just step on them all. Now I'm interested in riveting things, like what time Nana had her dinner, and what she had for dinner, and what time Nana hung the washing out.
This whole video about me in a parallel universe has been a maladaptive daydream. The term for an alternate version of yourself in a maladaptive daydream is called a parame. Me from the parallel universe is my parame, and this video is from my parame's perspective. I don't know if this is the end of the video, but if it is, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Part 10. What if in a different parallel universe mites were mostly blue instead of mostly red? Would I still be interested in mites, or would I have never became interested in mites? Would my interest in mites die before it was ever born, like a fetus skeleton made of blue mites? I had OCD around mites and earthworms years before either of them became my special interest. The OCD led me to having a special connection with those animals, which probably led to my special interest in them years later. Red is my favourite colour. It's so bold and intense. It's a sensory thing. I became interested in mites during mania, where my senses were amplified, so the colour red was even more intense, and mania brought me even more joy from the colour red. Mites are mostly red because of pigments called carotenoids, which are usually red or orange. However, when these carotenoid pigments are attached to proteins, it can give a blue colour, and that's why some lobsters are blue, because their carotenoids are joined to proteins. What if in a different parallel universe, mites' carotenoid pigments were joined to proteins? This may give mites a blue colour, but if I loved mites because they were red, would I still love mites if they were blue? I would still worry about squishing mites with my OCD, but I may view mites like other tiny creatures like springtails, which are insects' relatives. So I may view mice like other tiny creatures where I like them, they're just not my special interest. I may also have developed a special interest in earthworms because earthworms are usually pink, and pink and red are my favourite colours. Mites are my babies, and in this separate parallel universe, my interest in them died before it was ever born. All that remains is the skeleton of what could have been, made of blue mites. The skeleton joins the other mite skeletons in the multiverse's mite graveyard full of bones made of mites. When the multiverse ceased to be made of all mites, my girlfriend made of mites died. With OCD, I worry I'm attracted to my mite girlfriend. Now that they're a skeleton, what if I'm attracted to dead mites? What if I'm a mite necrophile? Obviously, I'm not attracted to mites or dead mites. But why might I worry this? Well, with autism, you can attribute human characteristics to mites, like seeing them like people. With autism, you can also have a very specific, intense, special interest in mites. You can like mites for a sensory reason. For example, mites look like little red jewels or gems or beads. Together, they look like lots of grains of sand. I love the look and feel of sand, like kinetic sand, because it's an autistic sensory thing. With depression, you can have a very negative, critical thoughts. With mania, you can have very bizarre, unrealistic thoughts. With mania, the joy of your special interest is amplified. You feel intense love for them. Your senses are also more intense when you're manic. Everything looks brighter, might look redder. Textures like sand feel and look even better. A pile of mites look just like sand. So how does OCD interact with this? Well, when you're in a mixed episode, you have the negative and critical thoughts of depression mixed with OCD. So with depression mixed with OCD, you worry you're a bad person or worry you're attracted to people you're not. But in a mixed episode, you also have mania as well as depression and OCD. So when depression, OCD and mania combine, the thoughts about being attracted to humans mix with the bizarre and unrealistic thoughts of mania. This means because you see mites as people with your autism, and now you have the bizarre worry that you have the bizarre worries, you have the bizarre worry that you're attracted to mites. Because with mania, the love and joy you feel from your special interest and sensory joy is intensified, and the love is intensified. This means your OCD can make you mistake this feeling for attraction towards mice because it's so intense. My skeletons are part of my story and fictional world. This means that because they are part of my story, I maladaptively daydream about them all day. This means mite skeletons are constantly on my mind, and my OCD mistakes this for being attracted to dead mites because you're constantly thinking about them, and you think, why else would you be thinking about them so much? Because I think about my maladaptive daydream all day, mite skeletons are always in the forefront of my mind, which means my OCD is always triggered. I know I'm not a mite necrophile, but that's how in a parallel universe I may worry I'm a mite necrophile, even though even in the parallel universe I'm not actually a mite necrophile. I used to have a pet orange gecko. You can get orange-coloured mites living on geckos called Geckobia mites. But what if instead of mites just living on a regular gecko, the whole gecko was made of mites? I'm going through a phase where I like shades of orange, and me and my mite family got a pet gecko made of orange Geckobia mites. Everything in the multiverse became made of mites, but then the multiverse stopped being made of mites. All the people, animals, and rocks made of mites died. Here are the foot bones of my pet gecko made of mites. The foot bones are made of mites as well as geckos having toe bones called phalanges. They have structures alongside their toe bones called paraphalanges. The paraphalanges are depicted in red, and the paraphalanges are part of gecko's skeletal system. Gecko's feet can stick to surfaces, and paraphalanges may help support gecko's feet. All the skeletons made of mites lived in the afterlife, but they wanted everything to be made of mites again. They were amassing an army of the dead. They exclaimed with their high-pitched voice, as mites are so tiny, and they exclaimed,
Humans think they're the dominant species on the planet. They thought they were the center of the universe. They thought even the sun revolves around them. They thought they could do what they want to anyone or anything deemed lesser than them. They'd even deemed other humans who were not the same race as them lesser than them and justified harming them. Biologically speaking, humans are all the same race and therefore so similar that one group of people can't even be superior to another. Humans think they can do what they want to nature. They think, what have certain animals ever done for them? But what have they ever done for those same animals? Humans are destroying the planet. Humans hate dust mites because some people can have an allergy to dust mite poo. But what about all the sewage humans dump in rivers? Human poo is much worse than dust mite poo. If everything in existence is made of mites, everything and everyone is the same. There are no organisms superior to other organisms, no dominant organisms exerting and imposing their will on others. We are all made of social colonies of mites. The mites work together for the collective. There is no individual valued more than the collective. Every mite in each colony is equal. There are no classes. Western culture is too individualistic and therefore narcissistic. Each skeleton is a colony. We care about the needs of all the mites making us up. We care about the group, not just ourselves, and we help each other. Humans, on the other hand, will say, it's not my problem. That's why everything needs to be made of mites again.
Part 11. Trigger warning. The next part talks about extremely disturbing taboo thoughts people with OCD get. These thoughts go against the person with OCD's values and cause so much distress because they are the opposite of the person who has those thoughts. These thoughts do not reflect a person's beliefs or intentions, and people worry about these thoughts because they care so much about being a good person. And people who care a lot about being a good person usually are good people because they care so much about it. It's like how when someone worries about germs, they are so clean that they're the least likely person to get ill because they worry about it so much that they wouldn't get any germs. Similarly, if someone with OCD irrationally worried they are attracted to something very taboo, the person with OCD are the safest people to be around because they worry about it so much that they never ever act on anything like that. And of course, they're not even attracted to that thing in the first place. It's just like an irrational worry. And one of my therapists actually said I'm the safest person to be around. Here's why with my OCD, I irrationally worried I was a double pedo-necro-scato-acari-phile. So my maladaptive daydreaming is now about skeletons made of mites. I worry I'm attracted to a girlfriend made of mites. The girlfriend made of mites is now a skeleton, so I now worry I'm attracted to dead mites. When typing into Google woman's skull so I could copy off a photo, the photos did not say what age the skull was. This meant I felt anxious because I had to make sure that I did not accidentally draw the skull of someone younger than me, because it's hard to tell from just a skull. I did not want to search for adult woman's skull because the word adult could mean something else inappropriate about dead people. So I worried I'd drawn a girlfriend made of dead mites where I did not know what age the skull looked most like. In the last part of the video, the drawing of the mite girlfriend just happened to be on the screen when it was talking about dust mite poo in sewers. Although this was unintentional, this means I now worry I like something about the poo of a girlfriend made of dead mites. In a previous part of the video, I was going to talk about how I avoid content about the manosphere and how I watch educational content that is about Earth's natural spheres, like the biosphere or the geosphere, instead of the manosphere. I'm interested in soil and mite, so I asked Google what the name for Earth's soil sphere is. It came up with pedosphere. Ped means foot, so I assume it's just called that because we walk on soil. I like soil, so I worried I was a pedo in a different sense of the word, so I worried I was a double pedo. I know the word scat means poo and the word acari means mite, so that's why I worried I was a double pedo-necro-scato-acari-phile. Me and my girlfriend made of mites, and another person covered in ticks. I love ticks like a person. I don't know how to express my love for ticks. They're cute like a pile of round water beads, but that expand with blood, not water. Maybe I love ticks like a cute puppy. Maybe I love ticks like I love my mom, or maybe like I love friends, or maybe like I would love a girlfriend. I'm so confused about how I love mites and ticks and muddled up about in what way I love things and people in general. I want to care and look after mites and ticks, and even if I'm not really attracted to mites and ticks, I still really love them like a person in an innocent way. Mites and ticks are my special interest, and through my OCD compulsions around avoiding squishing mites, I've developed a really deep emotional connection to mites and ticks. I just love them, and now I'm tearful. I actually am a bit tearful though. Ticks can have a huge, serrated, saw-like mouthpart called a hypostome. I gave the tick person this mouthpart. I worried I was attracted to ticks and got the OCD intrusive image of the tick person giving me head with this mouthpart.
Or sucking my blood in a certain personal region.
This thought caused me distress because it went against my values and because it was not concordant with my true desires. I think I hate myself. I'm a disgusting freak. I'm worthless. I'm some creepy pervert for having this thought. I'm sick in the head. I'm so confused, and I feel anxiety, shame, and guilty. And I feel insignificant and insecure about myself. I'm a horrible person. My confidence and self-esteem is going down, and I feel embarrassed and less confident. I want to stop making this video on mites and ticks. I always previously thought about ending this video by saying, in loving memory of all the mites I accidentally squished. But do I have the mites do I love the mites and ticks in a sick, deviant way, where people have to watch out for you?
I saw this adorable Lyme disease bacteria cuddly toy. Lyme disease bacteria are shaped like a coiled worm, and I love worms too. I drew me hugging giant Lyme disease bacteria. I don't yet actually know anything about Lyme disease, so maybe in the future I'll realize it's really horrible and that I'm being very insensitive. Lyme disease rash can look like a bullseye, a red patch with a red ring around it. I drew a little Lyme disease person on my arm for me to talk to so that I'm not lonely. I saw this documentary about how some gay men are attracted to the idea of catching HIV and will go to parties with lots of people with HIV and try and give themselves HIV. I have also heard of the term rabies sexual on Tumblr, where some people are supposedly attracted to the idea of getting rabies. While I think the part about HIV parties is actually true, I'm not sure if the people claiming to be rabies sexual are just trolling. With mania, I love ticks and therefore Lyme disease so much that my OCD made me confuse this completely innocent love and irrationally worry I was attracted to the idea of catching Lyme disease. The mania gave me these bizarre thoughts. I value mites and ticks because of my autistic special interest, and OCD tries to go against your values and go against things you care about. Of course, a thought is just a thought. It is not a fact, and it definitely does not mean that I actually am attracted to catching Lyme disease. So I'm worried I'm attracted to a tick person sucking my blood in a special personal area with their hypostome tick mouth parts, and I worry I want that to give me Lyme disease because I worry I'm attracted to the idea of catching Lyme disease. I worry when I'm manic I'm going to be more impulsive and not think about consequences, and that I'm going to seek out getting bit by ticks. In mania, I keep having the compulsion to ground myself every time I get the thought to catch Lyme disease. I also worry about this when manic because I worry about catching diseases and contamination with OCD. During the COVID pandemic, I once actually washed my hands 50 times in one day because someone had to come into my house to fix the boiler, and I had to wash my hands every time I touched anything that they had already touched. So I also worry about being attracted to Lyme disease because I worry I won't be able to control myself during mania and seek out ticks, and that I'll get infected because I worry about contamination. But again, I'm not actually attracted to Lyme disease, and this is just an intrusive thought. With OCD, I worry about being manic, and I try to counteract the mania and do the opposite of what mania wants me to do. I worry I'll do something bad during mania, so I have to counteract that. Part 12. Everything in this next part is real and about real life and the real world, and all the information in the next part is factual. So I had a swollen and red eyelid. A pharmacist said they thought I had a condition called blepharitis. Blepharitis can be associated with a species of mites called Demodex blepharitis. For a couple of days, every time I blinked, it felt painful. This meant I felt consciously aware of every time I blinked. This meant I became hyper-aware about blinking. I'd think, right, it's been quite a few seconds since I last blinked. I'll blink again, then I'd compulsively blink a couple more times to make sure I'm blinking enough. This is a form of sensory motor OCD, where you can worry about bodily sensations or bodily processes, such as being hyper-aware of other things like swallowing or your heartbeat. This meant I felt a lot of anxiety, and it was exhausting being constantly aware all the time of normally automatic bodily processes like blinking. After a couple of days, it stopped hurting as much when I blinked, and today I found out that the eye condition blepharitis has the same name as the mite species Demodex blepharitis. Mites are my autistic special interest. I love mites.
I'm not mad at the mites for infecting me. I don't hate mites at all. I still love mites, and now I have an even stronger connection to mites. I have a special bond with mites, and I love them unconditionally. I don't even feel I need to forgive mites, because the mites are just trying to survive, just like us humans are trying to survive. Mites are a part of me. I am one with mites. It's like I'm never lonely because I have my little mite friends sitting perched on my eyelid. It's like I'm carrying the mite round, like when a parent carries their babies around in a backpack. The mites are the apple of my eye. I want to go sightseeing with all the mites. I want to explore the world together with them. I want to share every moment with them and do everything with them. They're so tiny and I want to look after them. I might have to get rid of them as this is a medical condition, but until then, I'll savour every moment with them. If it is the last day I see them, then I'll watch the sun set together with them at my eyelid. The sun will go down, and I'll say goodbye as the sun sets on our relationship. You may have invaded my eyelid, but really you've invaded my heart. You burrowed into my eyelid, and now you've metaphorically burrowed into my heart. As I put my eye to a telescope and look at the night sky, my eye is pressed up against the telescope, so the mites possibly living on my eyelid will be able to see through the telescope as well. I want to gaze up at the stars together with my eyelid mites. I'm starstruck by the mites. I actually drew this drawing on a moving train. The noise is because I recorded this at a train station. I was on the train to visit my grandma who lives in a different part of the country. I basically took the mites with me on holiday to visit my family together and introduce the mites to my family. My vision may be cloudy, but that's just because I'm on cloud 9 with my mites friends. Tomorrow I'm going on a walking trip. I'm going to go sightseeing with the mites and show all the mites the bridges in Newcastle in England. Here's a drawing of the Tyne Bridge going over the Tyne River, which I'm going to show my mite friends. Because I see through my eyes, and mites live on my eyes, we see the world through the same angle and perspective. We see the world through each other's eyes. It's a special connection. When I first noticed my red swollen eyelid, that may be the condition blepharitis, I thought my eyes might not be as symmetrical anymore because only one eye is infected. I heard that if a face is less symmetrical, you can look less attractive. I used to have a bad body dysmorphia as a teenager. I thought maybe I'd look less attractive if my eyes and therefore face looked less symmetrical. Currently, I have only had a red swollen eyelid for a few days, and in that time, lots of people have been saying I look really nice and have a nice face. This is really unusual, because normally no one ever says I look nice, and I even find it hard to comprehend someone finding me attractive. Especially because with my OCD, I worry so much about creeping someone out or making them uncomfortable. Normally it negatively affects my self-esteem when no one ever says I look nice. I have a few theories why I've suddenly been getting lots of compliments the last few days. In the past, my eyes are one of the only things anyone has ever complimented me about. Now that I have a swollen red eyelid, it draws attention to my eyes and people might notice my eyes more. A different theory is that the mites are my little babies I'm looking after. Women may be attracted to men who are good with kids because that's an indicator the man would make a good father to the woman's child. Because I look after mites like my babies. Even if I don't know the actual age of the mites. But yeah, so because I look after mice like my little babies, maybe women see that and think, ooh, I'd make a good father because I'm so good with my mite babies. Of course, I would not be well enough to look after children, and therefore I would not want children. But maybe, even if I'm not a potential father, Maybe women are still programmed to find caring men attractive who would make a good father, even if they're never going to actually be a father. Of course, this is all just speculation, and you have to take this all with a pinch of salt.
And that's why mites burrowing into my eyes may make me more attractive to women.
Mange is a disease in dogs that can cause reddening of a dog's skin and a dog's hair to fall out. Demodex mites can cause mange in dogs, just like they can contribute to red, swollen eyelids in humans, called blepharitis, and a reddening of the cheeks in humans, called rosacea. There are 2 species of Demodex mites that live on humans. These species are called Demodex follicularum and Demodex brevis. The word brevis means short, and Demodex brevis is shorter than Demodex follicularum. Demodex mites can also affect other mammals like dogs. However, the species of Demodex that infect humans are different to the Demodex species that infect dogs. The Demodex species that live on humans don't infect dogs, and the Demodex species living on dogs don't infect humans. There are 3 species of Demodex mites living on dogs. The shortest species is Demodex cornei. Demodex canis is a bit longer, and Demodex ingi is the longest out of the 3 species. Canis just means dog, so Demodex canis is called that because it affects dogs. So those 3 species of Demodex mites infect dogs. So mange in dogs can be caused by Demodex mites. So mange can cause a dog's hair to fall out, and it can cause a reddening of the dog's skin. Here's the side profile of someone's face with a condition called rosacea. You can see their eyes, cheek, and their nose to the right of that. Rosacea can also be associated with Demodex mites living on your face. Rosacea can cause the face to become redder or pink. And sometimes rosacea can progress and become a type of rosacea where the skin can thicken, and this can lead to a bumpy and bulbous nose with enlarged oil glands. This type of rosacea, involving thickening of the skin, can be called phymatous rosacea. My mom has rosacea, and rosacea is genetic. Although my mom's rosacea has not progressed to phymatous rosacea, rosacea can be genetic. Rosacea in general is more common in women, however rosacea can be more severe in men. My nose gets quite oily and bumpy, and so I do sometimes worry about if it will turn into the type of rosacea with thickened skin. I used to have very bad body dysmorphia, and I've always never wanted a big nose. I think men have bigger noses than women on average. This is the type of rosacea I'd want the least. You can need plastic surgery with this type of rosacea, but I've always been very sensitive and aversive to any pain or gore because of my autism. I wouldn't want plastic surgery. If you've ever wondered what might finally turn me against mites and make me become the mite and worm murderer, where I kill mites, it may be this form of rosacea. However, while more Demodex mites may be associated with rosacea, I'm not quite clear what the relationship between rosacea and Demodex mites is. There may be other factors involved, and so maybe I could not all put it down to mites, and so maybe I'd still like mites if I had this condition and was still interested in mites. Or maybe in a parallel universe, I'd turn into the mite and worm murderer and kill mites.